This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. I discovered an eclectic treasure trove of a shop called East Meets West in the beautiful town of Schull in West Cork. When I chatted to the owner, Amanda Connell, I discovered the most fascinating person who had a life and career with the most interesting twists and turns. She left her little village in Norfolk in England when she told her parents at the age of 9 that it was time to move on, and she has never looked back. Let's hear from Amanda. Amanda Connell.
Yep, that's me.
How are you doing?
Good. I live in West Cork. It couldn't be anything else, really.
Yeah, and of course, the listener can't experience what I'm experiencing now. You have the most beautiful house. Thank you for the invitation. Could you describe to whoever's listening where you live and what we're looking at?
Okay. Basically, I live in the field of my dreams, but it was a field. There's never been anything on this field apart from horses and cows occasionally. And I deliberately built an upside-down house so that I would have views and feel like I'm sat in a field. So all the windows upstairs are almost ceiling to floor. So with the idea that it would be like having a picture frame almost to look out at, and it's open plan. And then the geek in me has made sure that the house is entirely wheelchair accessible, so that what I'm trying to do is future-proof it, so that if in 20 years' time I have to go into hospital for some reason, most people, elderly people, can't come out because their homes aren't suitable. But I will be able to come in and live either upstairs or downstairs. I can access the upstairs directly via a bridge straight into the kitchen. I have a bathroom up here, and then downstairs I have the bedrooms. They all have doors straight outside. So the idea is that I shall live here forever.
So have you always been this efficient planner?
I never used to admit to it, but now that I'm getting older, yes. Yeah, I'm always 3 steps ahead. Always. and I don't worry if it doesn't work out, but it's I think, having had loads of counselling stuff, it's being the product of alcoholic parents, is that you're always sort of looking ahead so that you can forestall whatever calamity is coming, or engineer so that you can do what you want to do without problems. And I've done that since I was tiny weeny.
So your story is getting even more interesting before we've even started. So Amanda, the question I ask everyone, and we'll reveal everything throughout the course of our chat, is who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Okay, I know you've asked other people this on the podcast, and I was listening because I really enjoyed your podcast actually. Then it got me thinking, going, who am I? And I'm going, oh Lord, I don't know. I'm a chameleon. Well, I was born in Norfolk in a small village. Over 60 years ago now. But I only actually lived at home for 10 years because I was a boarding school brat. So I never lived at home for more than 3 weeks since I was 10 years old.
That's very young to be going off to boarding school.
It is, but it was actually really fortuitous because it was the 70s stock market crash, and we went from the house and the boats and the holiday homes and the to zip. But luckily I'd got a scholarship to go to the boarding school, so I was okay. I realised that I was just really fortunate, and it suited me down to the ground. So I did that, and I suppose I can divide. I did Norfolk for 18-20 years, London for 20 years, with I had a little detour and lived in the States for a while. And then West Cork for the last 23 years with a few detours. I've done 2 stints living in Singapore.
So Norfolk, were you living in the country or?
Tiny village, but we were, I think that's why I get Cork, is it's really similar. Norfolk was very much, and West Cork particularly, because Norfolk is, you can't go anywhere from Norfolk apart from fall into the sea. And to this day, Norfolk doesn't have a motorway because too many people might get there. And I hightailed it out of there because I was known as Fred Wright's granddaughter or Peter Wright's daughter, and everyone knew everyone, and I didn't like it. And
your mum and dad, what did they do?
My father he ran a brush making business, which had been in the family for, my brother would have been the 9th generation. So my first trip to Ireland actually was in the 60s, because my father used to do business with the Kenneficks and the Corcorans. But anyway, we used to come over to Cove and stay in Kinsale.
Okay. Your dad was a businessman?
Yeah, he was a businessman. And my mother was lady of leisure for a while. Dabbled with this and that. But she ran an advertising agency for a while. My father bought her an advertising agency and she ran it. Very successfully, and then decided it was all too much.
I've had enough of this work.
Yeah, basically. They did well. And the agency still they sold it, but it's still going. But I realised that I think the reason I trained as a physio, because that's what I hightailed away to do, which I hadn't planned on, but I just knew I absolutely did not want to be in business. And the pursuit of money did not make anyone happy. And I was just convinced of it. So I'll do anything apart from being business or commerce. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Was that from observing your dad and
observing my parents and the kind of circles that people, it was worshipping the great god money, which is what we suffer from here, really. I mean, everywhere. And it doesn't make people happy.
Yeah, it's an evil god.
It's a distraction, and actually doing the right, for me, doing the right thing will bring you the money anyway, is what I've found.
Yeah. Because on the Win Happy podcast, for me, winning isn't about money.
Nope.
Now, for some people it might be, and okay, fair enough. If that's that thing that turns you on, that's okay. But no, it's not about money.
No.
Of course it's not.
No.
And you figured that out watching your mum and dad and the circles that they swam in and all of that, was it?
Yeah, there's a lot about status and possessions and having stuff. And I mean, it wasn't until I think my very last contract that I actually negotiated a salary. And for most of the time that I was working, if you asked me what was my annual salary, I had no idea. I would take jobs just because they sounded really good and interesting. And I remember just not long after I was married, and I got offered a job at King's College in London. And I was really excited about it. I thought that was kind of cool. So I just said, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And my then husband came home and he went, well, how much are they paying? I said, I haven't a clue. He said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. Just it'd be a great thing to do. It's what I want to do. And it was the right decision.
Yeah, we'll talk about buying and margins and making money and everything else a little bit later. And the conversations around the kitchen table at home when you were there.
Oh, debate. Lots of debate. And very formal. Like Sundays were always grandparents over, dining table laid. We were in the dining room. We were allowed to come down the front stairs instead of the back stairs in the house. And we went to the drawing room and all this kind of stuff. It was always very formal and very polite. The less formal ones, they were always so drink-fueled that it could be a bit loud. But we were expected to debate and defend our corner. And
okay.
Yeah. There was a great emphasis on being smart and well-educated.
Yeah, having an opinion and challenging and topics and all of that.
Yeah.
That was an interesting house.
Oh, it was. Yeah. No, and I'm very grateful for it. I mean, nothing's ever easy, and but I learnt a lot from it. I learnt how to hold my own, not to be worried about debate and disagreement. learnt how to lose an argument without getting upset. Also got quite devious about how to win an argument without people realising that I'd won it, which is always a good thing when you work in academia.
And that decision to go to boarding school, I presume that was made by your parents?
No, I don't think my mother's ever forgiven me. It was around the time we used to have this thing called the 11 plus, where it decided whether you went to secondary or to grammar school, and they were just getting rid of all that. But Norfolk being Norfolk, there was no comprehensive, and so I sat my 11 plus and did well, and so the county offered me a scholarship to go to a boarding school. And I don't know the ins and outs of it. And my parents weren't sure. And everything was blowing up because my grandfather had sold the family business. And God help my poor father, he was going to have to go and find a job at the age of 37.
Oh dear.
Never.
Work for someone.
Yes, you might have to work for someone.
Oh my God. I think that's something about being self-employed. You become unemployable.
Well, it was a real toughie, actually. So I was summoned downstairs. This will tell you how formal it is. We always had to have had high tea and be in our jammies and ready for bed by time. So my father would come home, have his gin and mix or whatever, and then he would come and say goodnight and everything. And then I was summoned downstairs at 7 o'clock at night, down the front stairs, no less.
Special occasion.
And I was going, I know I haven't been naughty, so I don't know what's going on. And it was okay, you're 9, so you're allowed to have an input. We want to discuss going to boarding school. Because I was 9, rising 10. I turned round and said to my mother, well, I've lived at home for 9 years. I think it's time I moved on. I don't think she's ever forgiven me. And it's one of those sort of stories that's gone through the family.
Yeah.
And off I went, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
There were no shedding tears, homesickness, all that kind of thing?
No, because you see, it was routine and it was predictable, and I was the eldest, so I was always minding the younger two and managing the older two.
So were you 9 or 29?
Oh no, I lost most of my teenage years to minding my parents. My boarding school was a sanctuary.
Yeah, and it was good for you.
Extremely good, because I just threw myself into it. But it was something my father taught me. It's like, if you get an opportunity, take it.
Yeah.
So I played sport, I did music, I did dance, I did whatever. And because we were in boarding school, we had to study. So academically, it was really helpful.
And was that one of those, you come home on a Friday and you're home at the weekend, or gone for months?
Gone for months. We had exeats, they were called, and you were allowed to go on 3 over a term. But my parents decided that it was all a bit too much effort, so I went on 1 a term.
Oh, so we'll see you once a year instead of 3
Oh no, once
times
a
a year.
term. No, I got to see them 3 times a year.
Okay, that was nice.
and the holidays, but the holidays were all a bit much. So we were usually dispatched to friends or family, or we go on family holidays abroad and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't really family life at all. It was very much it's very sort of old school. And I suppose my parents, they'd both been evacuated during the Second World War, so they had no idea what we would these days consider family life. So they thought they were doing this amazing job for us. So I did too, because you grow up thinking whatever you experience at home is what you think is normal, until you get into the big wide world and go, okay, so my family are a bit odd.
So your buddies and all that kind of thing. Well, I presume your friends were other boarders, so that was your circle, really. That was your experience, wasn't it?
It was, you see, and so there was a group of us in Norfolk, because all our families had known each other for generations, so there was a gang there. But in terms of school friends, they could be from anywhere.
Yeah.
All over the country.
So when you're sitting in boarding school, in the class, and for whatever reason, the teacher has lost your attention, where do you go in your head?
Oh, I'm usually sailing. Sailing, or planning something, or thinking about what to do next.
Yeah, and where would you sail to?
Oof. No, it's not going anywhere. It's being on the water and the silence. And one of the things, actually, because I was thinking about this, it's the quiet. I mean, this house is incredibly quiet. And when I first moved to London, I spent the first year trying to find somewhere in London where it was quiet and you couldn't hear anything. Because growing up in a village, it's quiet at night.
Did you ever find it?
No, it's actually not possible in London.
Yeah.
I would walk to the middle of Hampstead Heath. I literally went on a mission to try and find silence, and you can't. The only time that actually happened was when Princess Diana's funeral cortege went through North London, and I suddenly realised there was not a sound. And we were living in Kilburn at the time, but everything went quiet. There were no cars, no one on the road, nothing.
And deciding what you wanted to do with your life, besides not running a business, what was your thought process? How did you end up bumping from one thing to the next?
My grandmother on my mother's side was a doctor, and she was just the most lovely. She always kept an eye out for me, and she understood that things at home were interesting. So we would go, she'd take me off down the bottom of the garden and I'd ask her stories about what she'd done in the Second World War and all this kind of stuff and talk to her. So I decided, because she'd been a doctor, that perhaps I'd apply for medicine. And then I got really sick in my last year in school with glandular fever. I got sent home in January, February. Was sort of well enough to take my exams, but didn't get the grades I needed. And so I was told, oh, well, you just go, I was young for my year anyway, just go back, do your exams again. I was like, not a hope. No way.
Not a chance.
No, not doing that. So I was dispatched down to the careers office, and this woman took a look at me. She said, what do you like doing? And I said, well, my parents want me to be a doctor, and I like playing hockey. And it was that stereotypical. She said, oh, you should be a physiotherapist.
Good thinking.
I had no idea what one of those was. Not a clue. And I went, oh, okay, because it would keep my parents quiet. And promptly took myself off to Canada and the States and came back just in time to start physio school in London at Guy's Hospital. Yeah,
so in the big smoke.
Yes, and of course I was the most disgusting 18-year-old because I thought that I knew everything because I'd travelled on my own. Well, I mean, it was a bit brave when I look back. I mean, at 18 I had I'd been dispatched to Great Aunt Edith in Canada, and her and I did not see eye to eye. And I got on a Greyhound bus in Toronto and arrived in the Port Authority in New York on my own, barely having been to London. Just at 18.
Yeah, I'm off. I don't like Edith.
and I just toured around for 3 months. I'd saved up enough money working odd jobs at home, and it was great. So when I got to physio school, because it was very much physio school, it was full of sort of nice white middle class girls, only girls, no boys allowed. It was deemed unsuitable back then to have boys in the same class. And I thought they were awful because I was so full of myself, which was terrible, really.
Were you a little shit?
No, I was just badly behaved. I didn't go to an anatomy class until January. Me and Heidi and Sue had a competition to see who could get furthest into the programme without the teachers knowing our name. And I won because I eventually turned up in an anatomy class in the January, given that we'd started in September. And Mr. Venables, I can remember going, you must be Amanda Wright because I've never seen you before, but I have been told that you do exist. Damn.
You were on a list somewhere.
Yeah. And it's so funny. It ended up being my career, and I ended up as a professor in physiotherapy and with all these students. And when I see the ones like me, they just make me laugh.
Did you study eventually? Because I presume you actually learned how to do all this.
Well, it was really interesting. I was very bold the first year, but we had to pass exams at the end of the first year. The other thing that I realised was, and physios are going to kill me for this, it's not rocket science. So you have to put the hours in because you must know your anatomy and your physiology, and you must have good communication skills and all the rest of it. But for first year, basically, we had to pass those exams. So I crammed for them and got through. And then second and third year, we did half days treating patients, at which point I was mortified the first week because I didn't know enough to treat a patient, or to, even if I was observing. So I actually, on the very, very QT, because it would have spoilt my image, I made sure that I was really well prepared every time I went on the ward. Because it's not fair if someone's needing healthcare, patients do expect that the people treating them know what they're doing.
So how did you close that skill gap?
I'm quite smart. It came very easily to me. I'm really lucky I have this ability to take information from lots of different places and put it together, which sometimes people find tricky. So I'm not necessarily book smart, but I can take my anatomy and I can take my pathology and I can take my communication skills and then my observation of the patient and stuff and put the whole thing together, which you will never ever find in a book, ever. Which is why some healthcare professionals are better than others, because they know with the bits of knowledge that they have, they know how to put it together. It's that sort of metacognitive bit. I mean, I was a jack of all trades in school and master of none, which actually, if you want to be a good clinician, is exactly what you need to be.
Did you enjoy it as a career?
I hated it at first. I loved the patients, loved the work and the challenge. And I want, again, this shows how old I am. In each graduating year, someone would get a tap on the shoulder and say, "You have been chosen," and you get the job. The job at Guy's. So you never interview or anything, and you're chosen. They have a vote apparently amongst the teachers and the clinical staff. And I got a tap on the shoulder from the principal who said, "If by any miracle you pass these exams, you have a job here." Because I wasn't known for studying. I was a good clinician, but I wasn't known for exam stuff because I just found it boring.
Yeah, but I think I'm gathering from it, you had it in yourself to catch up at any time if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't going to be a bother.
No, it was fine.
So you passed the exams, did you?
I did. I did. Got the job. And looking back, because I don't know what the timing of it was, but I find that every 4 to 5 years I changed things up. So I did my sort of year and a half going fine, but I decided I wanted to go back to America because I'd just been having fun and I wondered what it would be like to live there. So I went to America and worked there for just over a year.
The butterfly then came back to London.
Oh, don't know. The boyfriend came and got me.
Did he ruin your life?
Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, at the time I thought so, but in hindsight, no. I have this recurring dream of, because I used to live in North London, you know, the Abbey Road zebra crossing. I used to have this recurring dream at the point, because I did actually marry him, but he disappeared within a year of marrying him. He just decided he'd made a bad decision and he literally vanished. And it was pre-internet or anything like that, so there was no way to find him. And I used to have this recurring dream that I'd be driving down Abbey Road and he would step out onto the zebra crossing. And there were two endings to this dream. Either I would put my foot down and run him over, screaming, "You bastard," or I would slam on the brakes, jump out of the car and go and shake his hand and say, "Thank you so much for leaving me because it woke me up and I'm having a fab time, thank you."
So where did he go to?
Not sure. It's quite fun because my aunt kept tabs. Eventually he ended up, I think he's in Australia now, but what we realised was he had a pattern of meeting young, I used to be blonde, so young tall blondes, and once you got to about 24, 25, you were past your sell-by date, so he'd move on to the next one. And I was past my sell-by date.
Ah, that didn't last long.
No, I was 22, 23 when I married him. So yeah, I only got a year out of him. Yeah, and he had a repeated pattern of doing that, and eventually I think he landed into Australia. He eventually did marry again and have children, but he was 10 years older than me, so he'd be in his 70s now.
Has he been through a few since, do you think?
Apparently, yes, which is all highly amusing.
There was another queue of tall blondes.
Well, yes, because my mother came across him because I actually switched boarding schools to do the last 2 years because I wanted to do science. And if you go to an all-girls boarding school, they're not great on science. So I went to an all-boys boarding school where there were 8 girls because we wanted to do science. And my mother, a few years after I'd left, she was at some kind of drinks party or something. And my old housemaster had said, oh, my niece is here. She was at school. And we're a bit worried about her because she's got this older man that she's bringing to the party. And this niece would have been about 20, 22. In walks my ex-husband. So, and then up came the introductions and said, oh, do you know Nigel? My mother said, yes, I used to be his mother-in-law. Fantastic.
And tell me, Ireland and West Cork, when did that creep into your life?
Oh, so dispatched husband number 1. So it was footloose and fancy free, and I joined a hockey club because I used to play a lot of hockey when I was young, and met this very charismatic, very wild ad man whose father lived just down the road here. And I remember talking to the girls on the hockey team. We know you'd be having your showers afterwards, and they went, you're not going to go out with him, are you? And I went, I am. He went, he's trouble. And I said, I know he's got trouble tattooed on his forehead, but God, is he good fun. And I was such a goody two-shoes, sort of community physio out in the East End of London and building this sort of, couldn't have been more different.
What did you like about him?
He was wild. And I was so well behaved.
Yeah, I think you needed that, did you, at that point in time?
Yeah, I mean, he was funny, and he pursued me with a vengeance. But he would do things that I would be cycling to work and stuff, and he would be getting taxis and in his Armani suits and stuff. And then he'd go, come on, we'll go for dinner. He said, he'd sort of phone me at work and go, we'll go for dinner in Covent Garden, which, you know, in the early 80s was very exotic and very flat. And I'd be going, whoa. Okay. So he wanted to come over and see his father and said, would I like to come too? As it turns out, the reason he asked me is because I had a little Fiat Panda. And we drove all the way here. But I remember getting out of the car in Ballydehob because we were meeting everyone at Levis's because Nora...
That was an eye-opener.
Well, it wasn't. It kind of felt...
Norfolk again?
Yeah, and I remember getting out of the car and going, oh, this feels familiar. This is really nice. And just a weird coincidence. And Julia Lee was one of the 2 sisters that used to run it. She was going, oh, Sean, you're home and you brought your wee girline. And she gave me a hug and she came up to me literally about my belly button. And then she said, have you ever been here and chatting? And I said, oh, well, as a child, I learnt to swim in Kinsale, and George Kennefic was a friend of my father's. And she said, oh, George, he had his first heart attack in here. It's just, oh my God, this place is as mad as I am.
Yeah, welcome to West Cork.
Yeah. But it just felt really good. And then we would come every single summer. And then the other side of it was I'd moved on from being clinician because I'd done a master's in neuropsychology and was moving more towards the sort of teaching and academic side, and got a job at King's. And we used to have in each intake a handful of Irish students because there were so few places to train in Ireland. And they were fantastic. They were absolutely brilliant. And I went, oh, Irish secondary education is better than the UK. And I was kind of falling out of love with England. I'm not sure My brother was here a few months back. And he said, you love it here, don't you? And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, you never really liked England very much, did you? So it was an easy move for me, and I had been watching the secondary school here. Again, me thinking ahead and planning, but having that. And I was going, that's where my children will go to school. And they did. And it was, I have to say, as good an education as all the thousands that were spent on mine, probably better actually.
Yeah. So when did you start living here?
2000, permanently.
Okay.
Yeah, moved, so 23 years ago.
Yeah. But you were still travelling the whole time, weren't you, with work and everything?
No, because I'd done 10 years as a clinician, and then I moved to King's College, so I did roughly 10 years with them. I was going back to King's because I was doing quite a lot of postgrads courses and stuff. We had got involved in the evidence-based practice thing. We were the first sort of non-medics, because the medics always like to take over everything. But we had some funding from NHS R&D, which was really great. So I was going back and doing some of that. And then we moved here, and the idea was that Sean would work a few days a week and I would work a few days a week, and it would all be this idyllic West Cork life.
It nearly was.
For about 5 minutes. But so I opened up a little physio practice, went back into clinical work, which was great, especially around here because, I mean, we're talking about 23 years ago, is that there'd never been a physio in Skull, and now you've got access to 5 or 6 people. So I was a person of interest. People's going, who's your woman down the road?
With the funny accent and the strange profession.
Oh, some of the stories were hilarious. And then I also did a couple of days for Bantry Hospital, because one of the things I've always done is startups. So we started up a community paediatric service down here, because the kids were having to go up to Cork, which is, if you've got a disability or you've got a spinal cord injury or whatever, by the time you've driven the roads up to Cork, it's a complete waste of time to have your physio up there.
Yeah, then you really have a disability, don't you?
I mean,
4 hours round trip?
Yeah, I mean, nuts stuff. So we got that going, and then University of Limerick got the funding to set up physio OT in speech and language, and I got a call going, are you still trying to be a hippie in West Cork? And I went, I am, but things aren't working out too well. And I went, would you like to do some consultancy or interview for a job? And so I interviewed, and that's what's so fantastic about life, is just when things were really, really, really grim, suddenly this amazing opportunity. So I've been out of academia for 3 years and then dropped back into a brand new programme, which was actually based, one of the reasons I got the call is it was based on the King's programme, so I knew it really well and I'd written quite a lot of it. And everyone else was new, and it was almost like deja vu. I landed and going, I know how to do this. I can do this.
Yeah, it's in your bank, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You have that stored up.
And it was just so cool, because it was like doing the King's thing again, and we could leave out all the bits that didn't work, but also because we were absolutely brand new, with the remit, don't do it the way Dublin does it, because we need to develop community services, which was my gig. It was fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic.
So you'd found your groove again.
I did. Yeah. So I did that for a while. Then the kids were growing up, and I made them a promise that I would find some, because I was away 3 nights a week, which was not ideal when you're a single parent. And it was so tough for them. And I hate the word proud, but I'm in awe of how they got through all of that and everything they've achieved since and all that kind of stuff. But I made them a promise. I said, I will find a way to be home when you're doing junior and leaving cert and whatever. And I managed to get the Health Research Board set up clinical research fellowships specifically for the allied health professions, and I managed to get in on the first round. So that was 3 years funding, and I just happened to locate my research project in West Cork.
That was a good trick.
It was completely evidence and needs based, and I could support it in the interview, and they gave it me because nothing was being done for rural kids.
You do find your path, don't you? You do.
Of course. I mean, it's that thing about doing the right thing. So my PhD thesis was around, I looked at developmental profiles of children going into school, because children get pigeonholed really early on, but actually development is so multifaceted, is that if you measure them at the wrong time or the right time, you get the wrong results, and then they're put in this box, and it might be the wrong box. So that's what my research work was about.
Now my eye is after drifting up to the top shelf of your cabinet. And is that a book about the Doors, or is it one of their
No,
albums?
it's vinyl.
Ah,
Yeah.
excellent.
Vinyl from, I think I bought that in, probably going to say 71.
I used to have record shops.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and one of the little gifts of West Cork is that I brought down my vinyl player.
Right.
And all of my vinyl, to be honest, things I hadn't listened to in a long, long time. And now instead of sticking on Netflix and falling asleep, I'm listening to loads of records.
Yeah.
And buying new ones. I've always bought music, but yeah, pulling out all of the old ones again. And it's so funny, there's things I listen to on vinyl that I wouldn't listen to on another platform. It's nearly a specific type of listening. So do you listen to records here?
No, I don't. And again, my brother was very into music and stuff, so he's got an amazing vinyl collection. Although when I went to his house, I found some of my vinyl was in his house. Yeah. But no, I must get a turntable, because you're absolutely right. I rarely listen. Yeah, for some reason the Doors just don't sound as good on Spotify as when there's something about putting. Yeah.
And yeah, I was listening to something yesterday, and I put on the side 2. You need to change sides after about 20 minutes. And you knew when they were recording and choosing the selection of songs that side 1 and side 2 have to open in a particular way and get your attention in a particular way. And that's kind of lost to music now. I remember the excitement. I can imagine in 1971 when you purchased that, bringing it home, the excitement, putting it on the turntable, putting the needle down for the first, because you couldn't listen to it any other way.
No.
That was the only way. And now, of course, you know, your favorite band pops up on Spotify. They just have released a new album and you press the button.
Yeah.
And now going to the shop, even ringing up, you know, is the new Doors album in yet? And yeah, where I grew up, I used to go across to Wilton Shopping Centre in Cork by the CUH, and we used to have a half day from school on Wednesdays. And I had a newspaper round, so I would have had my own money. And going across to buy, whatever album.
There was something magical about it. I remember that going into Norwich on a Saturday, because we always used to go to the city on a Saturday morning to do your shopping and go to the market and then meet the grandparents for a pint in the pub and all that kind of, well, we didn't have pints, obviously we were small, but it was going to Gerald's and going to the record department and flipping through to see what singles were out. And if you were lucky, you could sort of get there and go into one of those little booths to listen. No, I still absolutely love that. So you spent hours in record stores.
And they were cool places.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where you'd meet the buddies or other cool kids, whatever. It was such a special time. It was such a special time, that excitement. So, while we're talking about shops, a little shop in West Cork got your attention.
Right. So, there was a little shop called East Meets West, which was started by my former business partner, who's now retired. And I used to potter in there, and there were bits of all sorts of things. And she'd grown up in India, so she'd gone on a trip down memory lane and then picked up a few bits and realised that she brought them back. And in amongst all these things, I was going, ooh, that's really nice cashmere. Where does that come from? And there was always something. And then it was ticking along, but not in any great way particularly. And I was going, I think there's something in this. But I was, at this stage, I think I was just about to head off to Singapore. I did a 2-year stint, the first one. And she was going to Australia and then coming back.
How did you get to know this woman?
Just at Village. But you just know
chatting
people.
To her behind the counter type of thing, or?
Yeah, just chatting, and I think my ex-husband had rented one of her properties for a while, so she probably felt quite sorry for me. It's a very small place.
Yeah, this is true.
So you get chatting and that kind of stuff, and she was going up to India, and I'd said something. I think it was one of those real off the cuff. It's like, If you want to break the flight, stop off in Singapore. And then, I tell you what, I'll take a few days and I'll come to India. I've never been there. And I was doing a lot of travelling by that stage. I spent my 50s really milking take your research out to all the places of the world where they happen to have nice conferences. Or, sorry, nice places where they happen to have conferences is probably more accurate.
They're the ones you go to.
Oh, yeah. And went to Udaipur with her and just went, oh, this is interesting. Just love India. I mean, it's just so different. I mean, I have travelled quite a lot, but India is just, it's a completely separate thing.
Why? What makes it so separate?
The feel, the people, it's huge. It's completely and utterly got its own identity. And I find it interesting when people come into the shop and they go, oh, India, I'm not sure I could cope with the poverty and the people living on the streets. And I went, I feel more comfortable in India seeing that than I do when I go to Cork.
Wow.
Well, no one should live on the streets at all. And the poverty is horrendous and no one should live in poverty. But when I'm travelling around in India, and okay, it really is just a snapshot view, so it's just what I've seen, and it's not, I know every country has terrible problems, but I would see kids living under corrugated iron or in the shanty town stuff, but they're playing, they're with the parents, there's a network, there's something going on. If I go up to Cork, especially in the last couple of years, and I see people living on the streets, and quite a lot of them would have really obvious drink or drug problems. They probably have lost contact with their families. They have no network. They're in shocking condition. They're ostracised by society. Now, if I had to choose to be living on the streets, I think... Now, this isn't true. You'll find places, I'm sure, in Delhi and Mumbai and wherever where it's every bit as bad, but I don't think we should be so quick to judge.
Okay.
And I think that's the bit I don't... And if you go with I've always done it wherever I've travelled to, is when I arrive, I go, when in Rome, be a Roman. So, like when I've worked in Lebanon, or if I'm in India and stuff, is go, my way of thinking and belief systems and all the rest of it are my own. It doesn't mean that they're any better or worse or whatever. They're just mine than the person there who thinks that I have a bizarre way of living. It's really interesting. But then there are there's family connections, the people are warm. Yeah, it's just a fascinating place.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Bibi Baskin,
Right.
she opened a little hotel there, a little boutique hotel there in Kerala a long time ago.
Oh, nice.
And I think she adores the people and everything that goes with it. So from tagging along on a buying trip with your buddy...
Put money in, came back from Singapore. It was a 2-year contract for Trinity. Trinity were upgrading the Singaporeans' diploma qualifications to give them an honours degree. And so I went out there. They needed a senior academic on site in Singapore, and literally on a whim, as I do most things, I went, oh, I'll do it. I'll apply to do that. And it turned out that actually quite a lot of the very senior people in the physiotherapy world had been students of mine at King's, which was hilarious. So I had an instant in. It was just so fortuitous. It was lovely. But I came back having taken a career break from University of Limerick. And if ever there is a lesson in do not go back, always go forward, that was it. That was completely it. It was, So I got back in the January. Managed through till May, just going, this place is insane.
Yeah, it's good not to repeat yourself.
Yeah, and there've been changes, and I mean, UL has been a lot in the newspaper stuff. It was a difficult environment, but I think that happens to new young universities and new programs too.
Yeah.
So that was okay. And then I was here in summer and I went, I think I'm going to resign. And my daughter looked at me and said, do it. I went, okay. So I picked up the phone and went, I resign. I went, you can't. I went, I just have. It's like, whoa. So I put my money in, and I put money into East Meets West by then, and I was a joint partner, but sort of silentish, just sort of doing a few weekends. And that was it.
Okay, you had to step behind the counter and serve people and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're immersing yourself.
I was doing weekends, and I've been on a couple of buying trips and pottering around and stuff. And again, the brain was thinking. I was chug. Oh, actually, could do this, could do. And I think that's where partnerships either work or they don't work. Yeah. Is that I was all going, I have a feeling this could be really something, and my business partner just went, No, you have this all wrong. I've been running this, you don't know what you're doing, you've never been in business. I went, I know, I hate business, but I have an idea. So we agreed to part company. She wanted to retire anyway. And then the shop I'm in now, which is twice the size of the other one, came up, and literally on a whim I went, okay, the little shop's done as much as it can. We're heading west up the road. And we did.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful shop on the main street of Skull.
Yeah, it's
not like there's 300 streets in Skull or anything.
No.
But it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's great because, I mean, it's been built on... I have the luxury and the privilege of once, sometimes twice a year, I go to India with the entire budget for the year and go, ooh, I like that and that and that and that. And I just buy all the things that I want. But I've got it down to now there are 10 people that I really enjoy working with who are small businesses or individual craftspeople. And we've set the sort of, I hate the word branding. You won't mind all this, but I'm kind of allergic to all of this. But basically our whole thing, I sat down and go, what am I trying to do here? So the most important thing is sustainable employment, both for the craftspeople, but also for us here in Skull. It's difficult for people so many young people have to move away, or young parents can't get work because there's nothing flexible enough. So we've managed to do that for the last 10 years. We're open all year round, and the 2 women that work for me that only want to work part-time have their 2 days, and that's it. And they have that employment all year round. And the craftspeople I work with know that every year I will be back and I will spend money with them. And they were telling me that actually during COVID, that's actually what kept, for a few of them, because they're very small businesses, that's what kept them going, is that they were able to keep, in the pottery, they were able to keep on 1 or 2 people because they had an order to fulfill for us. So
the reason we're talking is we were down on a little scouting mission. We were having a peep at the house. I think it was only the 2nd or 3rd time that we'd actually seen it.
Right.
I think we put an offer in, having seen it once. And, you know, after you're thinking, oh my God, did we see it on a really gorgeous day? And
I remember you saying that. Yeah, so you have to do the winter here.
Exactly. This is true. All to be discovered. And we were visiting a pal. We needed to get a present. So we were rocking through Skull. I think what caught my attention was, and you have a lamp behind you.
I do, yeah.
I think you had beautiful displays of those lamps in the window. It just caught my attention straight away. And we had the dogs in the car, and they were getting a bit agsy. So I was the one that shot into the shop, and I think I was talking to one of your colleagues in there.
Right.
And got the most beautiful things. But I was blown away by the shop. And of course I said to Dee, next time you need to go in and have a proper look. That shop is amazing. And we've been in there a load of times since and bought a few bits and bobs for the house. We'll be back to get a few more bits and bobs. Could you just, again, the listener obviously has no idea what's in the shop. Could you give a quick little A to Z of what's in there?
Yeah. The 2 big things that we do are the mosaic glass lights, and they are beautiful. They're absolutely stunning. And they're glass shapes where every single piece of mosaic has been placed by hand. So even if I get 7 or 8 of the same pattern and size. If you put them together, they're all slightly different because they're all done freehand. And each year the patterns, even if I say, oh, could I have some more blue daisy lights? I will get blue daisies, but they probably won't look anything like the previous years. But so mosaic glass lights, and then old teak furniture, and it's the authentic stuff. I don't buy from factories because anything in the shop, I know its provenance, and I know that whoever made it has been paid properly, and that's really, really important to me. So teak furniture, everything from little wall glass cabinets to huge old wedding dowry chests and all hand carved, presses, boxes, chairs, tables, all sorts.
Rugs. Yeah.
And then we have cushions, and again, the cushions are cushion covers, all really lovely fabrics, and we pick out the fabrics, and then the guys is either made in Jodhpur or in Udaipur, and again, they're small family businesses or a cooperative, and they make the cushions for us. So there's that part of it is appealing to people who want something that you're not going to see in someone else's house. And because I've worked with the guys for a long time now, the quality is good. So soft furnishings. Then I have a few cashmere scarves just because I love working with Vishal, and the cashmere is just something else. And then Jaipur blue pottery, which is a really ancient form of pottery. It's actually quartz clay, and it's all entirely hand done and hand painted. So that's quite special. Some jewellery, which I buy in Udaipur because of the extended, this is again back to sustainable employment. There's a zinc mine in Udaipur, and a side product of that is silver and sterling silver. So I buy silver from Sandeep down in the market, who's a silversmith, and he sits at the back of his stall making bits and pieces. So I buy not high-end jewellery at all, but just like fun pieces, because the shop also, and then wood toys, handmade wood toys, because I want everyone from the little ones looking for a gift to someone who wants to buy a woolen jute rug. You can spend a £5 or you can spend 300 on a hand block printed, handmade quilt, king size quilt. So it's very eclectic, but it's all around lots of things that you'd love to have, but you technically don't have to have.
That sounds like a good recipe. Yeah, and when I'm in the shop chatting to you, you really get a sense of, I'm in the middle of all my favourite things.
Yeah.
Now, how in the name of God do you find these manufacturers? And then the process of purchasing, trusting, because obviously you don't bring them back in your suitcase. No. With people across the other side of the world, and having trust and faith and everything that's going to come across with the quality that you saw when you were there, it kind of blows my mind a little bit.
Okay, so I said it before, I am not a business person. My accountant just looks at me and he goes, I have no idea how you're managing to make money because you don't know anything about business. Don't ask me about margins. And my business, I quite happily send Mahesh money because he needs money. And then I know eventually it'll all come back. How do I do that? I look for people like me.
Now, for any business owners listening to this podcast, please take zero notice of everything that Amanda says. Don't come suing me after because we took her advice or anything like it.
No, but you see, because I had my career as such, all I need is for us not to be broke. I need for us to
good criteria
to balance the books. Yeah. So I've never looked to see what are my profit margins, what's this or what that's, and I've been pleasantly surprised most years going, oh, we seem to be making more money. Now, I'm being a bit flippant because I have in my head, and I don't know where it comes from. I have in my head what I wanted to do with it. So the shop has become what I wanted it to, as in, I've got the relationships that I wanted with the people, and I've realised now what I do is it takes about 3 years, is that I will find someone and then I might buy a few things, or I'll be going, I suppose the handmade paper that we've got in stock at the moment, which
beautiful.
Is absolutely good. I wanted to get some wrapping paper, but it had to be ethically sourced, it had to be a family business, it had to be eco-friendly. So it was quite a tall order. And my daughter and I, about 5 years ago now, rocked up. We got our driver to take us all through the back streets, way outside of Jaipur. And he's going, "Madam, are you sure this is the right address?" And I said, "Look, I want to go and see these people." And so he parked right by the door and he said, "I'll come in with you." And I said, "No, it'll be fine." And we rocked in there and they're going, and these people, look, these two Western women arrived in and we went, "We've come to ask you about your paper." And they're like, "Okay." So we bought a few bits and pieces and we went away again. And then we turned up again the next year and they sort of looked at us like, "You're back?" And I said, "Yes, I said we'd be back." Because so many people go to India and say, "Oh, I'll do this next year." And the Indians are let down so badly by Western people so often because there'll be a big order and then it all pulls out because we run our business very differently. So bought a few more things. And then it was during COVID. I contacted them and said, "How are you doing? You okay? I'm looking for paper, for some more wrapping paper." And they sent me some photos and said, "Well, we could do these patterns for you." And I said, "Okay, well, let's order 500 sheets and see what happens." And so they sent it to Mahesh, who is my lovely exporter who also does the furniture. He allows me to send everything to him. And it was just fantastic.
Okay, so he's the guy you trust to get the stuff
But
here.
it took me 4 years to get these paper people to do business. And now what I can do is I can contact them and say, "This," or I wanted paper bags for the shop, so I don't actually need to go and see them. So I contacted them and I said, "Mahesh will phone you and he'll pay you. Is that all right?" And they just come back, "Yeah, of course it is." So I'm now within the Indian network rather than being the Westerner coming in and taking something and pulling it out. You have to earn people's trust.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a savvy businesswoman. Maybe you don't like the numbers, but I think there's some compartment somewhere in your head that is functioning at a business level quite well.
I take it back to its transferable skills. Like if I was working with someone, say, who'd had a head injury, it's like I know where my goal is with that person. Once I've done all my assessment and I have a think, this is what I'm going to work towards. But they might still be unconscious in intensive care. But you're seeing the information that tells you that they should be, as things go along. So you break it down, you do this step, then that step, and then the next step. And sometimes it doesn't work, so you have to go somewhere else. So it's all that planning of having an idea of where you want to go and then being quite happy to do the little step, and suddenly you get there and go, "Whoa, that worked."
And you mentioned Meg, so that's your daughter. You've dragged her on some of your buying trips.
She comes on the buying trips, yeah.
Is she going to get the retail bug?
No.
Not a chance?
No. I mean, she's fantastic at it. But no, she just finished her master's at Bologna University in International Human Rights and is interviewing. She's got an interview with Médecins Sans Frontières, so she could be lost to us for a few years if she gets that. So she's got her own career path and interests.
Yeah, they need another travel buddy, another shopping buddy.
Well, yeah, this is the next thing, is I'm thinking I might just go decamp to India for January and February and then see if friends want to come out for a couple of weeks or 10 days here and there. Avoid
Ireland when it's cold, wet and miserable. That's a good idea.
You see, this is where I start to sound a bit scary, is that is part of the 10-year plan. Build the house so that I can actually close this house down. And I went, okay, if I'm going to retire, I need to find a way to travel still. And it would be nice not to be here in January and February if I'm going to travel, because that's a good time. So yeah, it's all part of the big plan.
Yeah, I'm liking this plan. So what's happiness to you?
Now, I knew you were going to ask me that, and it's funny. I was talking to my daughter about this, and she said, "I wish I had more of that," because I was describing to her. I said, "Do you ever get that sort of bubbly feeling where it just sort of, it bubbles sort of somewhere between your chest and your throat, and it's just this feeling of joy?" And I can honestly say that happens most days, and it happens at random times, where you just see something and just go, oh, how wonderful is that? It might be the first swallow, or seeing my cat doing something daft, or this morning I was walking, I walk the dog every morning, and there was just a particular site of where there was purple flowers, I don't know the names of them, but just something where, and I go, I'm really happy. And I'm like that quite a lot of the time, and I've begun to realise I'm very fortunate, because I don't think a lot of people are.
Yeah, I think if you could bottle that, that might be another thing you could sell in the shop.
Well, I think the other bit too is I do often say, and my children roll their eyes, I go, a little bit of adversity is not a bad thing, because I can also claim to have been, I'm unhappy sometimes for a few hours or a few days, and maybe for a few years. But, it's that accepting that life's a roller coaster. So when you get the joyful bits, they're just great.
You know what I'm going to ask you next, about winning happy. And these goals that you have, those moments of elation in a football context, I always say, when the ball hits the back of the net, and for that few moments, you're just celebrating wildly. What are your win moments?
I would say I'm immensely grateful most of the time. Those are my wins, when I actually, and sometimes I feel a bit smug, but I'll actually go and stand outside and I look at my house and go, I did that. Yeah. Or I'll look at I'd like going to my son or my daughter's graduations, or just all sorts of, it's the small wins. I think finding the joy is the win.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. Now, it's probably my last question for you, but and I know already you're not going to pin it down to one thing. I'm guessing, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What was your best day ever?
Okay, and I knew you were going to ask me this, because I had this little panic going, best day, oh my God, I've had so many.
I knew that's exactly what you were going to say.
And then I was going, I could be really smug and go, oh, my best day's yet to come. And then I'm going, no, actually, if I had to say what was my best day, and it's still so vivid. I must have been possibly 4 or 5. And I can remember it was a Saturday morning, and the house was quiet, and I could hear the wood pigeons. And the sun was coming in my bedroom window. And I think that's the first time that I really had that sense of joy. And I think that's got to be my best day, because from that, if I hear a wood pigeon, I can be in the most foul mood or down or whatever. If I hear wood pigeons, I'm like, oh, that's okay. Because there's so many best days.
Yeah, it sounds like on that day you discovered the joy of just observing things.
Just being part.
Yeah.
But also
mindfulness, isn't it? Just being mindful of everything. But if you discovered mindfulness at the age of 5, that was a good trick. I
think it was just realising I was just part of something, and I was actually no different from anything else that was going on in the world is equally as important. It's always a good one. Humans can get a bit hubristic.
Now, I suspect this lovely plan of yours about making your lovely home wheelchair accessible and everything, I think there's a few other twists and turns to come between now and then. Have you any idea what they're going to be?
Well, I sort of plan in 5 and 10 years. So my 60s is going to be, this is my decade. It's the first time since I was in my 20s where I'm not actually accountable to anyone again.
Yeah.
So I am going to have a blast. Just the simple things. I don't set an alarm clock anymore. For 40 years, I have had to wake up because someone or something has required me to. So yeah, the next, I've got 7 years left of this decade, so that's going to be travelling, shop, trying to turn this field into a meadow rather than a bare field. I put about 200 trees on here, so watching those grow. But I don't know what will happen in my 70s. Not sure yet. Not sure.
I think it's going to be jam-packed.
Oh, I'm completely retired, and I'm still working fairly hard.
Yeah. No, you're living.
I am. Yeah.
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 Amanda, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. I have sort of rabbited on the world according to Amanda, but there we go.
Yes, it's a good world. Well done. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.